here's your host John with more classic movie reviews.
Welcome to today's show. My name is John. As always, you can subscribe to the show on iTunes or follow the links to social media in the podcast show notes. You can also go to snarkymoviereviews.com to read notes, bios, and other random movie thoughts. Remember, this show is completely free and independent. All I ask is that you jump over to iTunes and give me a review. Today's movie is the film noir Brute Force 1947. It tells the tale of a group of prisoners that tell their story using a pin-up picture in their cell. It is noted that the inspiration and violence in this movie is in direct response to the Battle of Alcatraz, May 2nd to 4th, 1946. At the federal prison in San Francisco Bay, the prisoners fought until their death even though their situation was hopeless. Ironically, Burt Lancaster, playing the role of Robert Stroud in Birdman of Alcatraz 1962, helped to end the Alcatraz escape attempt. Of course, this part of the movie is not based in historical fact. The pinup picture of the woman used in the film is said to be a composite of actresses Yvonne DiCarlo, Anne Blythe, and Ella Raines by painter John Decker. I don't see it.
The actors.
This prison movie had a rather large cast, including 10 actors that we have covered previously. So here I go. Burt Lancaster played prisoner leader Joe Collins. The great Burt Lancaster was covered in episode 30, Birdman of Alcatraz, 1962. Whit Bissell played lovesick prisoner Tom Lister. This was Bissell's first credited role. We covered Bissell in episode 30, Birdman of Alcatraz, 1962. Ray Teal was uncredited as evil Captain Munsey's evil toady, Guard Jackson. That's right, double evil. Teal was covered in episode 60, The Command, 1954. Charles Bickford played Gallagher, the prisoner that was walking the line between guards and cons. Bickford was covered in episode 5 of Mice and Men, 1939. Yvonne DiCarlo played the role of an Italian girl during World War II, Gina Ferrara. DiCarlo was covered in episode 3, McClintock, 1963. John Hoyt played Spencer, former high roller and tough-as-nails con. Hoyt was covered in episode 78, The Big Combo, 1955. Roman Bohannon was cast as the weak-willed prison warden, A.J. Barnes. Bohannon was covered in episode 5 of Mice and Men, 1939. Sir Lancelot played Calypso, basically the only African-American prisoner, who provided impromptu calypso songs for the inmates. Sir Lancelot was covered in episode 42, I Walked with a Zombie, 1943. J.C. Flippin played prison guard Hodges. Flippin was covered in episode 71, Cat Ballou, 1965. Glenn Strange was uncredited as prisoner Tompkins. Strange was covered in episode 76, House of Frankenstein, 1944. Hume Cronyn played the role of the sadistic Captain Munsey, chief prison guard. Cronyn was born in Canada in 1911. Cronyn graduated from college having changed his studies to drama. During this time, he was an amateur boxer and was recommended for the 1932 Canadian Olympic boxing team. Cronyn studied at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and debuted on Broadway in 1934. His first movie was Shadow of a Doubt in 1943 and was directed by Alfred Hitchcock. Some of the movies that followed include Lifeboat 1944, The Locket 1946, Rope 1948, Under Capricorn 1949, The Seventh Cross 1944, where he received a Best Supporting Actor nomination, and Hamlet 1964. One of my favorite movies from this period was People Will Talk 1951. Cronyn played an angry doctor trying to take down another doctor, played by Cary Grant. Cronyn, and to a degree his wife Jessica Tandy, had a resurgence. He played a mean school supervisor in Conrack 1974, was in The World According to Garp 1982, Brewster's Million 1985, the hugely popular Cocoon 1985, Batteries Not Included 1987, Cocoon The Return 1988, and The Pelican Brief 1993. Cronyn died in 2003 in Connecticut. Anne Blythe played the role of Ruth. Anne was born in 1928 in New York State. As a youth, she sang in a choir and was in several Broadway musicals. When her play traveled to Los Angeles, she was given a contract with Universal. She started right away in musicals such as Chip Off the Old Block, 1944, The Merry Monahans, 1944, and Babes on Swing Street, 1944. When Anne switched to Warner Brothers, she got the role of Veda in Mildred Pierce, 1945, and a Best Supporting Actress nomination. During the filming of Danger Signal, 1945, Anne broke her back. She was still in a wheelchair when she filmed Brute Force, 1947. She started getting better roles such as Swell Guy, 1946, Killer McCoy, 1947, Another Part of the Forest, 1948, Mr. Peabody and the Mermaid, 1948, and Once More, My Darling, 1949. During the 1950s, she was on fire with Our Very Own, 1950, Thunder on the Hill, 1951, The Great Caruso, 1951, Katie Did It, 1951, and The World in His Arms, 1952. However, she turned back to musicals. She starred in Rosemarie, 1954, Kismet, 1955, The Student Prince, 1954, and The King's Thief, 1955. But as the musicals died, so did her career. She had a couple of bounces with the Buster Keaton Story, 1957, co-starring Donald O'Connor, and The Helen Morgan Story, 1957. After this, it was mostly theater and television. Ella Raines played Cora Lister. Raines was born in 1920 in Washington. After college, she headed to New York to be an actress. She was signed to play Randolph Scott's girlfriend in Corvette K225, 1943. Later, she was in Tall in the Saddle, 1944, with John Wayne. She was in many A movies, some of which include Hail the Conquering Heroes, 1944, Impact, 1949, and Phantom Lady, 1944. She had a TV series called Janet Dean, Registered Nurse, 1954. However, her career was essentially over. She died in 1988. Anita Colby played Flossie. Colby was born in 1914 in D.C. She is known for CoverGirl, 1944, Brute Force, 1947, and Mary of Scotland, 1936. She died in 1992. Other actors include Sam Levine as Lewis Miller, Jeff Corey as Freshman Stack, Jack Overman as Kid Coy, Vincent Barnett as Muggsy, and Art Smith as the drunken Dr. Walters.
Story.
This noir drama takes place in the overcrowded Westgate Penitentiary sometime after World War II. The prison is surrounded by water and only connected to land by a bridge. The bridge has a drawbridge section controlled by the guards in the front tower. At 6 a.m. on a rainy morning, the men are awakened and counted. Of course, Calypso, Sir Lancelot, sings his reply. In the next crowded cell are Spencer, John Hoyt, Soldier Becker, Howard Duff, Freshman Stack, Jeff Corey, Tom Lister, Whit Bissell, and Kid Coy, Jack Overman. They have a rather odd pin-up over the sink of a female face that has her eyes closed. To me, it looks like she is dead. Out the window of the cell, they see a hearse carrying out Frankie. They say he died because Captain Munsey made the 62-year-old con work in the drain pipe. They see their other cellmate, Joe Collins, Burt Lancaster, flanked by guards, Captain Munsey, Hume Cronyn, and Guard Jackson, Ray Teal, view the departing dead man. The guards try to goad Collins into fighting.
Knowing McLean, out in 8 months, back in 9. Right, Collins? Still carrying a grudge, eh?
Lay off, Munsey.
No, not Munsey. Sir. Sir.
Collins has been in the hole for 10 days on the charge of carrying a shiv. Collins says the weapon was a plant. As Collins walks down the hallway, he meets Dr. Walters, Art Smith. The doc is ashamed that he never visited Collins in the hole, so I assume the doc was unable or too weak to save the life of Frankie. Collins joins his mates in the cell and finds out that Kid Coy has been moved into Frankie's bunk. Collins establishes that Coy will follow his lead and he is accepted. They say they have made arrangements to take care of the stool pigeon. Collins says nothing will be right until they are all out of prison. Next, they move into the prison chow hall for breakfast. Prisoner Wilson is running around trying to get help. He eventually arrives at Prisoner Gallagher, Charles Bickford, and Louis Miller, Sam Levine. Louis tells Gallagher that Wilson is doing a 5-year stretch for false impersonation and that he planted the shiv on Collins. Wilson protests that Captain Munsey made him plant the weapon. Gallagher refuses to help. Munsey and his toady Jackson come in among the prisoners. Wilson tries to talk to Munsey, but they give him the brush off with no concern. When Munsey leans on Gallagher, Gallagher tells him that the Bible says everyone gets what they deserve eventually. Later, Lister bumps into Munsey and Jackson begins to club him. Munsey won't let his assistant hurt the man. Calypso works in the doc's office. The doc has a few drinks before his morning meeting. The very weak warden, A.J. Barnes, Roman Bohannon, is being chewed out by his boss for the problems that are happening at the prison. The warden talks about the overcrowding and lack of work. The boss says if there are any more problems, there will be some firing. You can almost see Munsey slobbering for the head job. Collins gets a visit from his attorney, Howland Chamberlain, and he tells him that Ruth won't go through with a life-or-death operation without Collins around. The doc tries to keep a man out of the drain pipe, but knuckles under to Munsey. Collins hangs out with Doc and establishes a time alibi. He also asks the doc about cancer and the surgery his wife needs. Down in the metalworking room, the prisoners fake a fight. When the guards are distracted, Soldier, Coy, and Spencer use blowtorches to force the stoolie Wilson into a metal crusher where he dies horribly. Gallagher runs the prison paper and uses Louis to run messages. Collins comes in to visit Gallagher and asks him to join in on a breakout. Gallagher thinks he's going to get paroled soon.
See this fellow at the linotype machine? He's a lifer. Done 12. Come on. Right off.
Yeah?
You know Collins. He's okay.
Sure.
How's the plan?
If there's no hitch, we go Tuesday. You in, boss?
No. Good luck.
It's all set this time.
Been all set every Tuesday for 12 years. And 12 years from now, it'll still be next Tuesday. Collins, if I ever put in with anybody, it'll be with you. There's no need for that now. You, I can tell why. Promise me my parole. Very soon now, I'll be walking out of here. Next Tuesday? Could be next.
That night, Collins heads to the infirmary to see a friend. Coy asks about the picture, and each of the other prisoners see someone special in the pinup picture.
Hey, what goes between you guys in this day?
Watch your language, my unromantic friend. You're speaking of a lady.
It's enough to give somebody the creeps. You fellas smiling at a picture, throwing kisses at her. You might think she was real.
She is. After a while, you'll get to know it, too.
It's true. To me, she looks exactly like my wife.
Yeah. That's no ordinary pinup girl. To each one of us, she's somebody special.
You mean if I keep looking at her long enough like you fellas, she'll begin to remind me of Henrietta?
Spencer tells the story of meeting Flossie, Annette Colby. He met her in Miami, and they did some illegal gambling. When the police raided the joint, she carried his gun and led him out the back. As they drove away in his car, she robbed him of his money, his car, and his gun. Did she steal his mojo? Collins meets with his dying friend that delivers the message on how to escape using the drain pipe. He is told he has to ask Soldier how they took Hill 633. 4 of the other 5 prisoners go to the movie, and Lister stays behind to write a letter to his wife that never writes back. He looks at the pinup and remembers the poverty-stricken life he had with his wife, Ella Raines, before he began embezzling from his company to buy her nice things like fur coats. He said he had to do it because they were heading for a split-up. Of course, he gets caught.
It's the most beautiful thing in the whole world.
Belongs on you.
Makes me feel so, I don't know, like I was somebody. Where'd you get it? Where'd the money come from? Where'd you get it?
Cora, I stole money. I juggled the books and took $3,000.
You? You stole? Why?
Darling, the way we were going, you wanting things you ought to have, and me strapped all the time, we were heading for a split-up. Don't you see? I just had to do it.
All my life, the one thing I really wanted was a fur coat. I can't give it up. I won't.
Munsey comes to the cell and tries to turn Lister into a stoolie. Munsey tortures him about his wife not writing back. When Lister refuses to rat on the others, Munsey gives him a message that his wife is divorcing him. The warden addresses the prisoners and says all of their privileges will be revoked if there is any more trouble. Lister is found hanging dead in the cell. Munsey assigns the remaining 5 cellmates to the drain pipe. That night, Collins asks Soldier how they took Hill 633 in Italy. Basically, they attacked it from 2 directions simultaneously. In the morning, they get a message from the warden that all privileges have been revoked. Gallagher goes to see the warden about the mass punishment. Gallagher is told that all parole hearings have been canceled indefinitely. The weak warden asks if he can still count on Gallagher. He is answered with a stare. Louis goes to the kitchen and sends a message to Collins in the drain pipe. The lunchman is escorted down by a guard, J.C. Flippin. In the tower where the gate is controlled, they have a .50 caliber machine gun that can either cover the prison yard or the drain pipe entrance, not both. The message is delivered to Collins that Gallagher is in on the escape. Later, Gallagher and Collins meet in the chapel. Guards sit in the back and watch as they go over the plan. The cons in the yard will attack the gate with dynamite, and the men in the drain pipe will attack the tower from the other side. They set the attack for 12:15 the next day. Soldier starts remembering his story, and it goes back to a small town in Italy during the war. He is stealing American food and taking it to Gina, Yvonne DiCarlo, a woman he calls his wife. Her father hates him and is beginning to turn him into the military police. Gina uses Soldier's gun to shoot down her father, but Soldier takes the rap. The big boss is coming back in the morning, and the warden is lamenting his dilemma with Munsey in the dock. The doc gets drunk and calls Munsey power mad and says he probably lied to Lister about his wife. Munsey eventually slaps the doc. That night, Collins wakes, looks at the pinup, and remembers his story. He is part of a stick-up mob on the way to pull off a job. They stop at the house where Collins' wife, Ruth, Ann Blythe, lives. She is in a wheelchair. He tells her pretty soon she will be well, but it seems he gets caught before he makes it back. In the morning, the plan goes into motion. Collins takes the pinup down and hides it in his shirt. Louis goes to the auto shop. He talks to Andy, Charles McGraw, and is shown guns and Molotov cocktails. Louis brings a gun back to Gallagher and says they can't get any dynamite. Gallagher sends Louis to the drain pipe to see if the escape is still on, but he is intercepted by Jackson and Munsey. Louis is chained to a chair and beaten with a hose by Munsey while classical music plays loudly. Although he is brutally beaten, he does not break. Munsey reveals to Louis that he knows the time of the escape. However, because Louis stood up to the beating, he doesn't know that Gallagher is in on the plan.
Is there any connection between Gallagher and Collins?
No. If there was, he would have told me.
Munsey spreads a story that Louis got hurt coming back from the drain pipe, so Gallagher thinks the escape is a go. When Collins doesn't get a message at lunch, he assumes everything is on schedule. The doc comes to see Collins in the drain pipe and tells him that Louis was beaten and that Munsey knows the plan. The doc tells him that Munsey will kill Collins to make himself warden. The doc also tells that there is a stoolie among the 4 men with Collins. Collins asks each man which position they want during the break. Everyone except Freshman says whatever Collins wants. Freshman wants to be last. Collins now knows he is the stoolie. Munsey and Jackson go to the tower, and they have another .50 caliber on the ground facing the drain pipe. Munsey takes over the tower gun. In the drain pipe, they jump the guards and tie them up. Upstairs, the warden is forced to resign by the big boss. He makes the announcement that he has resigned, and the big boss says Munsey will be taking over the prison. This starts an unplanned riot in the yard.
With Warden Barnes' resignation now in effect, this institution is in charge of Captain Munsey. I repeat, Captain Munsey is your warden. You will obey him. You will take all orders from Warden Munsey.
Yeah! 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 Yeah!
Munsey keeps the gun trained on the drain pipe. Andy brings the truck into the yard, and they throw the firebombs at the gate and tower. They also have guns and start shooting. The .50 cal from the tower opens up on the yard. Back in the drain pipe, Freshman has been tied to the front of the ore car and is being pushed towards the waiting ambush. The other 4 ride on the back as the machine gun opens on them. Spencer is hit and falls off. Coy gets hit but climbs to the top of the car and does a Superman leap onto the machine gun crew. Collins gets a .45 caliber Thompson machine gun and breaks into the tower. Guard Jackson shoots Soldier as he is retrieving one of the .50 caliber machine guns. Collins kills Jackson and another guard coming down the stairs, but he is wounded. Up in the tower, Munsey is having a grand old time shooting at the cons in the yard.
What's the plan now? The plan's a flop. You're on your own.
Gallagher jumps into the now burning truck and rams the gate. Collins makes it to the top of the guard tower and tries to open the gate. However, they swing inwards and are blocked by the truck. Collins and Munsey begin fighting hand to hand, but the larger Collins lifts Munsey over his head and throws him into the yard. The prisoners descend on him like hungry wolves. Collins sees the dying Gallagher in the truck and sits down. More guards come and the prisoners in the yard are dispersed with tear gas. Later, the empty cell of the 5 men is shown and the doc is in the next one taking a slug out of Calypso's arm. The doc talks about all the failed prison escapes. The doc looks into the camera and says no one ever really escapes.
Nobody escapes. Nobody ever really escapes.
Notes. I wanted to take a minute to discuss femme fatales. Do any of the 4 women featured in this mostly male film exhibit any of the elements of a classic femme fatale? I like the Wikipedia definition. A femme fatale tries to achieve her hidden purpose by using feminine wiles such as beauty, charm, and sexual allure. In some situations, she uses lies or coercion rather than charm. Flossie sure fits the elements of the definition. Her hidden purpose was robbery, but did it lead to Spencer's downfall? That certainly wasn't her goal. Gina had beauty, charm, and sexual allure. Her goal didn't seem to be to bring Soldier down. Her only goal seemed to be getting fed. Was it a plot and plan the entire time? Cora Lister had beauty, charm, and sexual allure. She, of all the women, seems to be a true femme fatale. She was ready to leave when she didn't have material items. Also, if she truly never did write to Lister, she was only in it for herself. There is the possibility that Munsey was holding up the mail. Ruth had beauty, charm, and probably sexual allure. Her weakness brought down the bad man, but she seems to be pure goodness with no motivations. This makes Collins the embodiment of pure evil to Ruth's goodness. So, 2.5 to 3 femme fatales and 1 purest no. Comments?
Here's the world-famous short summary.
Girls just want to have fun. If you enjoyed this week's show, please tell your friends, and if you really want to help, drop over to iTunes and give me a review. If you want to comment, recommend a movie, or just say hi, follow the links in the show notes to my site.